What's up, everybody? Welcome. This is the Tinker Tribe Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd. I am out here at the Self Reliance Festival and I'm hanging out with Shawn Mills of Hack My Homestead. And Shawn, how's it going, man?
Man, it's going awesome. It's been we're at the end of day one. It's been a really fun day. A lot of different speakers with different perspectives and different topics that they're experts in. And so that's been cool. And then kind of walking up and down vendor row, and like all these people that are selling stuff are obviously experts in their thing, right?
Yeah, there's
and so
a bunch
like
of people.
stopping and asking them, like the server security guys talking about all of that stuff, or the log cabin guys. So that's been really fun. Just like, oh, okay, how do you use what you're selling, and then like what are some exciting ways that you have some of your customers using your products. So yeah, it's been cool.
So you were really involved this year. I see that you were helping a lot with the event.
Yep.
So you were talking about like being early in SRF, and you were here for the first meeting.
Yep.
But you were even like kind of there when the idea sprang up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this is the seventh one. I've obviously been at all of them. I think this is the fourth one that I will have spoken at. And this really kind of came out of, it's really a brainchild of Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. She bought a property that she holds her annual workshop on, and the idea behind the purchase of that property like 14 years ago was to be a creative place where people could come and get together and share ideas. And at the time, she was like running a newspaper, so at that time it was like this was going to be a writer's retreat. Like that was the thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And then as she got more involved in the homesteading movement, then the idea became, okay, well, I really want to do like a homesteading meetup type of situation. And she was on the farmers market board. And then we actually met at Jack Spirko from the Survival Podcast. We met at one of his workshops. I think it was 2020, 2019, something like that. I don't exactly recall. But in any case, that was the year that he decided he was not going to do a spring and a fall workshop. He was just going to do the fall. So she's like, hey, opening, I will do a spring workshop now. And she actually got Jack to come out to the first one. So that was, 25, 30 people. And then during COVID, on the property that we're at right now, John from SOE Tactical had a get together. They had like 1,000 people here for a weekend.
Just like for a party?
Yeah, literally it was just a bonfire party. And the idea kind of sprung up. They knew each other through Jack. And then the idea kind of sprung up of, hey, you've got an audience, I've got an audience, there's some overlap. They're not the same audience, but there's some overlap. And we could put an event together at my place where we're bringing in people that are kind of tactical minded, prepper minded, but then we're also bringing people that are more homestead minded and farming and all of those different things. And then of course Nicole has a large female audience. So there was a joke made today that white guys with beards.
Yeah, white guys with beards.
Like that's who buys stuff.
We all fit this scenario.
Yeah. I'm looking around like, yep, we're all about 50% of the population here, right?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that was kind of the thing, is that they had diverse but overlapping audiences. John had the property. Nicole had the vision for how to organize it,
Yeah.
And they put those two things together, and here we are at the seventh one. Probably end up with 350 people here.
Uh-huh.
It seems like the fall one is bigger than the spring one normally.
You think so?
Yeah, we had almost
there were quite
almost
a few people here
600.
last time.
Yeah, in the fall. And then the spring before that was like 350. The fall before that was almost 500. So typically what we're seeing is, and I think it's because we have so many people in the homestead movement, that spring is planting time, it's calving time, it's lambing time, it's kidding time.
Yeah.
And so you've got a lot of people that are like,
this is a really
that's
busy
cool,
time,
but I'm too busy. I'm not coming.
Right.
But yeah, so I've been involved from very early, just through my relationship with Nicole. And then of course this year I actually came on as part of the event management team.
Okay.
So I was actually I helped secure some sponsors. I helped kind of put together, different, marketing outreach throughout the thing, and then here, part of the setup yesterday, and then kind of running through the run of show today and tomorrow.
Okay, really cool, man.
So I'm actually officially kind of like an employee of SRF now.
Oh, cool.
Twice a year.
Yeah. Okay, cool, man. So, yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about your story. I mean, I know a little bit that recently you were working for a company, and then you recently left, and now you're doing your own thing. You want to talk a little bit about what you have going on? I know you had Hack My Solar that you were doing for a little while there, and then so now you have Hack My Homestead. You're kind of showing people some different solar setups that I've seen on your channel.
Yep. Yeah, so I went off grid full time in 2012, about an hour from here in Linden, Tennessee. And by 2015, I was starting to get asked by people to help design their systems or to consult with them and things like that. Now, 2015, the financials of solar systems weren't great, right?
Yeah.
So most of the people that were coming to me were pretty wealthy folks that like had a second home in the woods on 100 acres that they wanted to put on solar, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so it was around that time that, maybe, I don't know, 2016 maybe, I actually started doing it and charging people, and that was Hack My Solar. And then a couple years ago, I screwed up and didn't renew the domain name for hackmysolar.com.
I got you.
I already owned Hack My Homestead. The plan was to expand into more than just solar designs, but I did not mean to accidentally let some squatter grab Hack My Solar from me.
Yeah.
So long story short, I rebranded everything to Hack My Homestead, and while I primarily do off-grid solar designs for people, I also do rainwater collection, I do gray water and black water management. I started a new company this year called Terra Toilet, so terratoilet.com, which is all vermicomposting toilet systems.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of us, if we hear about composting toilets, it's a bucket
with some sawdust
in it, right?
Yeah.
So imagine a composting toilet that has water in it. It looks like a regular toilet. You flush it like a regular toilet, then all the magic happens. Instead of a $20,000 septic tank, you can put a $1,000 vermicomposting system in, and you get, better for the environment overall than a septic system.
Yeah, could you talk about that a little bit? Like, how is it better, versus a septic system?
Sure. Have you ever smelled a septic system?
I've never opened one.
You ever been around when someone was pumping
it out? No,
yeah.
I haven't.
Have you smelled any of these porta potties around here?
Oh, yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that a septic tank works is it's an anaerobic bacteria process where your solids, which is the poo and the paper, and unless you've got little kids that are flushing other stuff down there, that gets digested by the anaerobic bacteria. Okay. And so that kind of will settle down, and you'll have a sludge layer at the bottom of the tank. Then you've got another tank next to it, and so the water at the top, or not at the very top, but a little bit below the very top, is relatively clean. It's not poop water, right?
Yeah.
So it'll go through into a secondary tank, and then that tank, so tank A, which is where the sludge and most of the anaerobic activity is happening, will overflow into tank 2, and then that will overflow into your leach field. Okay. And then that water just goes out into your yard. The problem is that the form of the nitrogen that's coming out in a septic tank is actually harmful to humans. So if you have septic and running water on your property, or septic and a well on your property, you can be putting
contaminate
those nitrates and nitrites into that groundwater. Okay. So the vermicomposting system, you're essentially just using specific breed of composting worms. They process the paper and the poo aerobically. They have their own microflora within them, has fungal activity and has bacterial activity in it, and their byproduct is not the worst smelling water you've ever been around in your life. It's worm castings.
Okay.
It's fertilizer. Okay. And so the way that most people will do a vermicomposting toilet system is they'll have the regular plumbing, and it'll come out and it'll go into an IBC tote, which is essentially just a fancy dewatering system.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a layer of gravel at the bottom, then a layer of wood chips, and then you've got like a lattice work of twigs, and then the worms. Okay, so the worms live in about the top 3 inches, and the reason why you build that twig lattice work there is so that you don't get clumping, right? So you've got wet paper and poo getting dumped into this bin. Okay, you don't want that kind of clumping up and becoming anaerobic, right?
Okay.
So the lattice work
Gives
almost
you
kind of
some
holds that up
oxygen.
a little bit,
Yeah.
and the worms will come up and they'll eat, right? And then they'll do their, they'll turn that into castings. The wood chip layer will capture some of the moisture and some of the ammonia from the urine.
Okay.
So that's the same thing as like putting wood chips down in the bottom of your chicken pen, right? It's going to bind up that nitrogen, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And then your gravel layer will actually be colonized by nitrifying bacteria. And so that is the same way that like a lava rock aquaponics flood and drain system works.
Okay.
You get beneficial bacteria living
on the surface.
Yeah.
Of stuff.
Or a gravel bed for like a pond filtration system. Same idea. So you're putting those 3 methods together, and then what you get at the bottom is not clean water by any stretch of the imagination. You still want to put that into like a wood chip bed, all right?
Okay.
But as the system matures, most of that stuff will get bound up in the system, okay? And as a matter of fact, what a lot of people do is they'll plant comfrey in the wood chips on the outside. And when the comfrey,
IBC tote?
yeah.
Okay.
And so when the comfrey starts yellowing, that means the nitrogen is getting bound up in the bin and not making it outside for the comfrey to take up.
Okay.
Right? And so what most people do is they'll build 2 of these bins side by side.
Okay.
They'll use one for the first time, then they'll put new worms in the second one,
Okay.
and then they'll move their pipe over. So they'll put their pipe on a fitting where it can rotate.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go from bin A to bin B.
Okay.
They'll let bin A sit for about 4 months. In 4 months, the worms that are in there will process everything, all the waste in that, and then you'll just end up with a layer of worm castings at the top. So black gold
Okay.
at the top. There's no pathogens in there at that point. Everything's been processed. You can scoop it out with your hand and go put it in your garden. Okay?
Okay.
Then you take your pipe and you move it over after you've harvested all your worm castings out. You move it over, and now
Start
you're
it over
using bin A for deposits,
Okay.
and bin B worms get to work for 4 months without any new deposits. So then they process. Then you've got a 3-inch layer of worm castings over here. So you go in, you harvest the worm castings out, you move your pipe over, you let bin A sit, and you just go back and forth.
So do you have to regenerate the materials that are in there?
So what
after
you'll
it's
do
done with
every
the cycle?
4 months is you'll add more twigs to kind of get that lattice work built up for the aeration on the deposit layer, we'll call it.
Uh-huh.
And then depending on, so a lot of this also depends on the diet of the person or family that's using it, right?
Okay.
So if you've got a 4-person household of vegetarians, that's a lot of fiber. You know what I mean? That's a lot of poo, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a 2-person household of carnivores, way less.
Yeah.
Way less, right?
Okay.
The more females you have in the household, the more paper is going to go in there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that's something that you have to kind of dial in. If you're going to put more material in the bin, you're going to want more worms because they'll work through that, right?
Okay.
So a lot of times you'll start a bin with like 4 or 6 pounds of worms.
Uh-huh.
If you're a family that's going to have a lot of stuff going in there, you might want to double those numbers.
Ah. Okay.
If you're, if you're a couple that's primarily a carnivore diet, you might be able to get away with like 3 pounds,
Okay.
and now the worms will find equilibrium
Yeah.
with what's going in there,
Yeah.
but it'll take them 90 days to double their population.
Now, can you use standard plumbing for this, like water flush toilets
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the easy way to do it would be to go straight down into a into like a rubber sleeve to a 90. That way you can rotate it, right? The rubber sleeve allows you to do the rotation.
Yeah.
That'd be the easy way to do it. But a lot of people have like their standard house plumbing, but then instead of going into a septic tank, they just go into a vermicomposting toilet system.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and now it's not legal everywhere. So like right here in Tennessee, you can't. In Tennessee, the state considers gray water to be black water, right?
Okay.
So even partially treated water, they treat like it's literally a human turd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, now if you're not doing things where the state health department is going to show up on your property to inspect
that's what I'm saying.
plumbing, then you're
like
So like where I live,
property,
I live no problem.
Probably cool, but like if you're
in
like
a subdivision,
Airbnb or like
actually even Airbnbs
like they're cool.
I've talked to some people that have Airbnbs that's their system because they want to have to pay to put another septic tank in on the system. Like if they've got a property where like main house is over here, and then like down lower on the property they put an Airbnb. Yeah, they'll put something like that down there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there are a lot of states where it is perfectly legal. Like in Texas, it's written right into the state code. As long as you have, I think it's at least 5 acres, and you're not putting the system in within 100 foot of the property line, perfectly legal.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it was a guy from Texas that told me about it initially.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so then I started designing them and learning about the worms and growing my own worms and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's just a new thing that I've started this year.
Yeah.
Last year, like you mentioned, I was down in Alabama, outside of Birmingham. I worked for a large industrial construction company. Yeah. And I was just doing Hack My Solar stuff on the side. Right. And then last year, basically July 4th weekend was like my first, like I left that whole career behind. 23 years in the same industry, and I started doing this full time. So wow, hadn't even been a year yet, like 9 months.
Now that's something that I've been talking to a lot of people here today, is that we're all looking for a different side hustle or something like that. What could you tell people out there that are like wanting to do what you've done and they're stuck in that maybe job that they don't like or whatever, and they're looking to do something else? Like, what was the path for you? What was the thing that got you to the point where you're at now? Like, you started this thing with Hack My Solar. Yep. And you were doing that, on the side, but what was that like moment where you're like, hey, I'm really gonna go after this thing? And were there like some hurdles in your mind that you had to get over? Yeah. On being able to move in that direction, because it's been a common theme with a lot of people I've talked to here today. Is like we're all wanting to do like something extra to build ourselves up or whatever, but everybody's kind of in maybe an analysis paralysis from a lot of the things that I've heard today.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to unpack there, right? So the first one is, we were lucky enough to find a place to buy back in 2012. Like, things are so much more expensive now, right? Yeah. We bought a place in 2012. Now, not like with cash, like we got a mortgage on it, Yeah. But we paid that mortgage off, and I'll share the numbers. I bought a 10-acre property with a 1,450 square foot house and 2 outbuildings for $75,000. Okay, now
that's good.
It was off grid. Yeah. The people we bought it from literally ran the place with a generator. Okay. Oh, okay. So I had to spend another $8,000 to put our first solar system in. Okay. Okay. So, but $75,000. That's probably a $250,000 property today. Wow. So we were, I don't like the word lucky, but I also understand that there's different challenges now than there were 12 years ago. 12 years ago, it was, well, if we have another collapse like 2008, then we might not have a job. Like, and I can't even pay my mortgage, even though my mortgage payment was only like $470 a month. Right. Right. And so, but I say that to say, because we had a place to fall back to, a property that eventually was fully paid for, it made it easier. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's like the thing where that part is harder today. Now,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
It's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
There's still $1,000 an acre property around.
Raw
and,
land.
Yeah.
So,
And there's still, if you're willing to work it, there's still the ability to do a shed conversion or a Gothic arch cabin kit or a Bunky Life cabin.
those are really cool.
Yeah, or a container house. Like, there are options. My daughter built a schoolie, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I will say that made it easier. That the house was taken care of. My property taxes are like $500 a year.
Oh,
you
wow.
know?
Yeah.
Like, I can literally go work anywhere,
Yeah.
and make $500 and keep my property, right?
Right.
So there's that.
Yeah.
When I first started doing Hack My Solar and I was doing designs for people, I would get asked a lot, why don't you do this full time? You have a passion for it, you're knowledgeable, you know, you seem to be able to talk about it, you know, da 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 da. I loved my job. My day job, my construction, you know, management job. I got to travel. I worked with a lot of really cool people. I had a lot of really cool customers.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for the vast majority of the time where I was doing it as a side gig, I didn't want to do it full time. And literally that would be my answer to people when they asked. Like, I like doing this,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to make what I'm making, you know, as a senior VP of operations for a construction company doing my side gig.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as long as I liked doing the job, there wasn't any impetus for me to take that next step. Right.
Yeah.
From 2021 to 2023, I went from loving my job to hating it. Okay.
Okay.
I moved to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved from the business development side to the operations side, and my boss quit, or I got fired technically. So now I'm reporting to a new person.
Okay.
I should have been promoted to my boss's old job.
Yeah.
The reason I moved to Alabama was because he's like, hey, when I retire, you're getting my job. You're going to be the president of the company.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get the job that I was promised, and I uprooted my family to go get. Now I got to meet people like you and
Yeah.
Greg and Billy and all those guys, right? So like, I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
But that was the change from 21 to 23 of, you know, the industry began changing. I had some guys that had worked with me for a long time, and they were like, well, if they're not going to let you run it, we'll leave.
We don't want to be here.
Yeah, like, we can see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And so that happened. So basically about the beginning of 23, I was coming home. I was like, you know, mad every day because of what was going on at work, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I came home and sat down with my wife and said, our older daughter was going to be graduating from high school last year, and our younger daughter was a sophomore. And I was like, I really don't want to yank Ashley out of school. And we homeschooled them till high school. Like, that was the deal. Homeschool, and then high school, if they want to go into public school.
Gave them the choice.
We felt like we had inoculated them from the system enough to where they could go kind of spread their wings a little bit, you know, choose their classes, think about the next steps after high school.
Yeah.
Like, that was the plan the whole way. So I really didn't want to pull Amy out as a sophomore and be like, okay, you get to go to a different school for 2 years with people that you've never met before,
yeah.
right? But it was like, I had reached the point where I had to.
Oh, yeah.
I was just mentally not, you know.
You were just miserable.
Yeah. And so yeah, we made the decision, okay, well, we'll stay through, you know, May, because that's when my older daughter graduated. And then I'll pull the ripcord and let them know, hey, I'm out, right? And so I did that in May, ended up working through the end of June, you know. They didn't need me to work through the end of June. They didn't listen to anything that I told them, and within 6 months, they had decided to shut the whole business down after I left.
Oh, wow.
That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was that. So that's all the bad stuff, right? So there's the part where we had a property to fall back to that we used to homestead.
Okay.
And when we bought our place in Alabama, we knew we were always coming back to Tennessee, but we figured it would be after both of the girls had left the house, you know?
Yeah.
Then step two, the job that I would never would have gotten rid of my career to do solar and off-grid stuff full time. The dynamics shifted to where I wasn't interested in doing that anymore. And then kind of, two things happened right at the end where I get an influx of customers. So that kind of helped me feel like, okay, well, I can get through the end of the year, and I had a lot of people say, and I guess I kind of thought this, but I didn't really know. I had a lot of people say, it's really not that hard, like, because I'm thinking healthcare, all of the self-insure, all this stuff.
Have insurance.
You can't live without insurance. Like, you literally die immediately if you cancel your insurance, right? And so I had a lot of people say, hey, I have a health share and it works fine, or I have this Christian church-based program and it works fine, and all this, and so that took a lot of the fear of the unknown away.
Yeah.
Right. And then I ended up taking on a couple jobs towards the end of last year that I shouldn't have. It's not that I couldn't do them. It's not what I really do.
Yeah.
And while they were like good money, which is the reason why I took them, I'm like, hey, I don't know when the house is going to sell. So yeah, okay, I'll come out to East Tennessee and put your system in rather than just design the system for you to put in.
Yeah.
So I did that. I took a couple, like, okay, well, I'll take that because of the money, right? And which the money was good, but then by the time the jobs happened, we had sold the house. Literally everything was paid off,
Yeah.
We took the little bit of money we made from selling the house in Alabama and paid the cars off. And so
debt free.
Yeah. 100% debt free right now. But yeah, so yeah, if you've got a place to fall back to, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
And here's the other part of it. And I kind of knew this in the back of my head the whole way, but you don't really like come to terms with it until you actually pull the ripcord.
Yeah.
Like, I really need to give this a full-time shot.
Yeah.
This deal, because I really like it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out,
go do something else.
Yeah. I was in this industry for 23 years. I'm known.
Yeah.
I can go get a job tomorrow afternoon if I need to,
Yeah.
If I put on LinkedIn tomorrow that I'm looking for a job, I'll have 5 offers, and that's not hubris. That's just, I poured my whole soul into that industry for 23 years nationwide.
Yeah.
And so, but I was still afraid. I was still afraid of taking that leap, And even when I did, I was really nervous about, like, oh, I'm going to be able to pay the bills and take care of my family and have insurance and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say that, it really helps to have that place to fall back to.
Yeah. Have it planned out to where you're not going to be in total poverty or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then you start making bad decisions. And I wasn't at that place, and I made some bad decisions. I took on jobs that I shouldn't have, that have eaten up a lot more of my time, have taken me away from my own homestead. So we were away from the homestead here in Linden for 6 years.
Yeah.
So now I've got a property that's grown up over 6 years that I've got to kind of whack back into shape.
Right.
And now I'm out, like, next week I'm going out of town to go try to finish this job up in East Tennessee because they didn't order the right stuff. So I was out there, had to leave, now I'm back.
Yeah.
And now they're paying for me for my time.
Yeah.
So I'm not complaining, but I still have to leave my own homestead, right?
Right.
And I'm behind where I thought it would be after, we have the cold snap and everything else.
Right.
But yeah, so in terms of someone turning that side hustle into a main hustle, if you know that's what you want to do, then you can build a plan out. For the vast majority of the time, for me, I knew that's not what I wanted to do. And then in an 18-month period, that calculus shifted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then all of the lies that I told myself about why I didn't want to do it, I had to overcome and figure out that I was really, I won't say lying to myself, I just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have health insurance. It's not that expensive.
Yeah. It's not as big a deal. Yeah. It's not as big a deal as people think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is a common theme for, I would say, a majority of people that want to go out and do something on their own. A lot of the guys that I listen to, they talk about it. It's just a grind.
Yeah.
You just gotta grind and keep after it and keep after it until eventually something happens.
Yeah.
And you just don't give up.
And the other thing, this is a big one too, is you might find that the best cross of skill set and what people are willing to pay you for might be adjacent to what you thought you were going to do. You know?
Yeah.
You might find, honestly, I think that the Terra toilet thing might end up being bigger than my solar business.
Okay.
Because I think that the solar suppliers are making these systems more plug and play year after year, to where there's going to become a time where people are like, I don't need to hire Shawn to design the system. I got everything I need. Everything he would have done, the solar manufacturer's already done all that work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
it's almost going to be like Lego things, maybe.
Right. I think that's where they plan to go with their systems, right? Because most warranty claims on a solar piece of equipment is because the homeowner installed it incorrectly. So they're incentivized to make it easier for the homeowner so that they don't end up having to deal with warranty claims, right?
Okay.
And so, whereas a vermicomposting toilet system, this is an alternative to a septic system. It's an alternative for a property that won't perk, or that where you want to put your house is a quarter mile from the spot on the property that actually passed the perk test, you know? Or if you put the septic tank up here and the leach field up here, it's a $40,000 job. But you can put it down here in this little valley, and it's only 20. Well, I don't want my house there, right? So now I've got a solution where I can handle the business.
So you can be able to make different decisions
without pooping in a bucket.
Yeah.
And now I could be totally off on my projection there, but I think that you have to be open to shifting and doing different things.
Not just be like so isolated on one thing, but be willing to like adapt and see where this other thing goes.
Yeah. And I think that made me successful in the corporate world. You know, the business that I took over in 2019 versus the one I left in 23, completely different. Like the revenue streams were different, the market was different. And so I kind of took that lesson to myself too, is, you know, what are my potential customers talking about? What are their problems? And being willing to, you know, move into those other markets because that's where the money is, right? So that's how you become really successful working for yourself. Do something that other people don't want to do and are willing to pay you for, right? And so right now that's primarily designing off-grid solar systems. But, you know, in 3 years it might be in designing and installing above ground worm-based septic systems.
So are a lot of the people that are coming to you looking to set up an off-grid place, are they doing this as like a kind of a retreat for themselves? Are they doing it for like a Airbnb type thing? Are they doing it to be prepared? Like, you know, what are the type of people?
The vast majority of the people that I'm working with are building their property for them to live on. I have a few people, like the big one I'm working on in East Tennessee, that's a second home / retirement home for these folks that actually live in California. And like they bought this farm and they are preppers, and they're getting it set up the way that they want it so that they can come here and it's like ready to go when they get here. So they planted 1,000 fruit trees last year.
1,000 fruit trees? Wow.
Now they think that 100 will survive. They put 1,000 of them in the ground.
Total neglect. You might
the stun method.
Such a great
But yeah, so I do have a couple customers like that, but the vast majority, and I would say my target demographic for my customer is someone who wants to either live off-grid fully or partially. It's their homestead, and they're really doing it from a bootstrap, you know, like we could spend 20 grand on a septic system, or we could spend 20 grand on a solar system with battery backup and a vermicomposting toilet system and a gray water management system with some permaculture design. So we spent the same amount of money, but now we don't have a monthly bill coming in from the grid and all of that nonsense. So
So almost like a kind of like an off-grid like package almost. Like,
yeah. And most people are like, I can't do it all right now, but I'm going to do a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I can spend $8,000 this year and get the tax credit.
Do it in phases. Or something.
What should I do with my first $8,000? That type of thing.
Okay.
And heck, I'm talking to people where they're getting quotes from the power company, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 to run power to where they want to build.
Oh wow. Okay.
Wait, I'm going to spend $80,000 to have a $300 a month bill?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the trends in the utilities. I remember listening to this guy that was big on electric vehicles a few years ago, and he was talking about how the utility companies have projected for an increase in energy consumption. However, that's not truly the case because of all the energy efficiency devices that have been created. So actually overall power consumption has decreased, and so they've invested in all this new power production, and they have to offset that cost to the utility buyer, and so utility prices have to increase to meet that. So you also have that as a factor. But I have been evangelizing for a while that you should at least have some type of energy backup system, and have a small type of way to do that on your property.
Man, you can have 4 solar panels on a 120 volt inverter and 1 battery. You can get into that system for under $5,000. And look, I get $5,000 is not a small amount of money. I understand that, but it's if you have that, you can utilize that to offset part of your monthly bill, and then you have that resiliency, and you're insulated from those price increases. So we had a lightning strike, so I told people for a decade, don't worry about lightning protection. I've been off grid since 2012, no problem, never had a problem with lightning, and we get tons of thunderstorms through this part of the country, right? Yeah, last year, right after we had fully moved back up here from Alabama, direct lightning strike. Or not direct, but close enough to where it induced current in the lines and blew out both of my inverters.
Oh, man.
So guess what I did? I ran the whole house off of a $600 Renogy 3,000 watt inverter.
Oh, wow.
Now, I have a solar powered air conditioner.
Okay.
So that made it okay. Is I could cool during the hottest part of the day. I could cool utilizing that.
Yeah.
Now, when I say cool, I'm talking about a 12,000 BTU unit for a 1,450 square foot 2-level house.
Yeah.
So we weren't cooling the whole house. We were cooling a room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that made it tolerable during, we had a week where it was like 99, 98 degrees here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
But yeah, for 3 months, our whole house ran off of a 3,000 watt inverter.
Wow. And so
there's two components in the whole house that wouldn't work. Our deep well, which is okay because we have rainwater catchment.
Okay. And
our bigger air conditioner that's 240 volt.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And you could run all the other stuff just fine.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Say, I need this massive. It's like you might, but you don't have to have all of that stuff.
If you want to live without any interruption towards your normal power consumption, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 3 numbers that you always talk about when you talk about a solar system. Your generation, your output, and your storage, right? Yep. So generation is the solar panels.
Yep.
Storage is the batteries. Output is the inverter, right? I need to be able to generate enough to have, let's say, 24 hours worth of power. But I'm only going to do that in a 6-hour window of the day, and mostly in a 4-hour window of the day. Right. Which means I have to be able to store that excess generation. I have to have enough excess generation in the middle part of the day so that I can store it in the batteries to get me back around to, call it 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Right? But then the inverter has to be sized appropriately to power whatever loads that you have connected to it.
Right.
Okay? So in our situation, by removing those 2 loads from the system, a 3,000 watt inverter was perfectly fine. And I know 5 people right now whose only power for where they live is from that same inverter.
From a 3,000 watt inverter?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
3,000 watt, 120 volts. Not even a split phase.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
single phase inverter. So if you think about your house, almost everything in your house is 120 volt, right?
Yeah.
Furnace, hot water heater, stove, oven, AC. Those are the things that are typically 240, and well pump if you've got a deep well.
Right.
And so all 5 of those things you can choose whether they're on or off. Now well pump, it's harder to choose, but again, if you have rainwater catchment, it makes it easy. Because now I only need a 1/10 of a horsepower pump.
Right.
To pump the water for the house, which is what we had. Even when we had the deep well, we would pump that into a cistern, and then we would use a small pump to actually pressurize the house, a small 120 volt pump.
Right.
So you just have to think about, could I live without those few bigger loads? Now, if the answer is no, okay, you need a split phase inverter or multiple, depending on what we're talking about.
You need to go with more batteries and more amount of solar collection.
Yeah.
And things
If I
like
have
that.
more output, I need more batteries. And in order to keep my batteries alive, I need more solar. That's the order normally that I do a design. Is what are you going to use it for?
Yeah.
Now, how much battery power do we need to do that work?
Yeah.
And then now, how much solar do I need to keep the batteries alive?
Now, is that like when you're talking to people, is that something that they understand when they're going into setting up a power system? Or do you
No
have
one
to
understands
do you
power.
have to do a lot of explaining on, okay, you're not going to have the same type of energy consumption that you're used to.
Yeah, so that is the one difference between me and the solar guy that's going to do the design. Is I live off grid full time, and I can explain to someone how they can make certain small lifestyle changes to make the system more cost effective.
Yeah.
Or they can do nothing different and just spend more money. Like Dr. Ken Berry asked me one time. He said, all right, I have, this, and this. I don't want to do anything different. Like, what am I looking at? I'm like, you're probably looking at $100,000 worth of components.
I have come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you want, and you don't even have to, then you won't even know that you're off grid.
Right.
But like for me,
Yeah.
so my whole system today, if you were to replicate everything I have, would be probably $15,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Outside of a couple of weeks in December, you wouldn't know that we're off grid.
Yeah.
You would not.
Yeah.
There's no lifestyle management that we have to do now. Now, with our old system, our $8,000 system that we used to have, that one absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, oh, can't do dishes tonight. We'll do dishes tomorrow morning, mid-morning,
Right.
So there was absolutely that. Now, outside of like I said, a couple of weeks in December where we just run the generator to get us topped up, you wouldn't know.
Yeah. So that's one of the things so one of my buddies is way more knowledgeable in solar. He actually helped me get started in building some stuff and doing all that. But recently somebody called him because there was this company called Solar Edge that installed these roof panel mounts on this guy's garage, and they had all these components in them with these load balancers. But the reason that I'm getting into this story is because I think there's a lot of these companies that are out there that they're doing exactly like you're saying. There's some sales guy coming in and saying, yeah, you'll have all this and it'll do all this for you, and you'll be able to sell it back to the power company, sell power back to the power company, and it'll be great.
Yeah.
And then they get it installed, and then something breaks down, and specifically on this guy's house, it was these load balancers that go on each one of these panels.
The optimizers.
Load optimizers, and it shut down his entire system, and it was basically dead in the water.
Yeah.
And then he had to reach out because my friend was a local NABCEP. He took the NABCEP certification.
Yeah.
And they sent him to him because they're like, we don't want to mess with it.
Right.
So So I feel like
we already have your money. We don't want to talk to you.
I feel like, so if you want to do solar, I feel like people need to go talk to you,
right?
Because if you're going out on the wider market, that you might get involved in something that you may not understand fully the implications of what they're selling you.
Yeah. So I do design work, and I also do just hourly consulting work. And the hourly consulting, that's most of the time where I'm talking is the people who have gotten a quote from a solar company, but they don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'll walk through it with you. And I was in contracts, like I did multi-million-dollar contracts on the construction side, so I understand contract language also. So not only can I sanity check the system, I can verify their generation metrics that they're saying, oh, you're going to generate this much. I can also read the contract better than someone who doesn't deal with that, and I can say them things like, oh, did you know that you're not actually going to own the system, which means that you're not eligible for that 30% tax credit? The company is going to own the system, and they're going to get the tax credit.
You're going to rent it from them.
Yeah. Or hey, I've got $100 a panel on my solar panels, and then I have $100 per optimizer for each solar panel.
Yeah.
But they're all at the same angle. They're all pointing the same direction, and they're not shaded.
Yeah.
Well, why do I need optimizers?
Right.
Oh, well, you need optimizers because
it only works with our inverter.
The inverter won't work with the solar panels. It only works with the optimizers.
Yep.
So you have to double the cost of your array just to be able to use their inverter. Well, we're not going to use your inverter then.
Right.
know? So yeah.
And it kind of gives
because I don't have any skin in the game.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you buy the system or not. I'm going to shoot you straight.
Yeah.
You know? And I've saved some guys tens of thousands of dollars by having that conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
because the
it's confusing, man.
And the sales guys are trained to lock you in and get your signature and be gone, then disappear in the wind.
Yeah.
Like all they care about is getting that sale. And a lot of those guys are commissioned at like 30 or 40% of what. So if they sell you a $100,000 system.
Oh, really? It's
30 grand of that. Yes, I'm telling you.
Wow.
If you don't go through a solar company, you save 50% off the top, and then if you DIY your labor, you save 50% of the remaining.
Yeah.
So a $100,000 system from Solar Edge, you can probably buy the components and put them in yourself for 25 grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 25 grand is a huge solar system with today's prices.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, it really helps to find somebody that is going to walk you through that process, because there is a lot to know. And if you haven't had your hands on building this stuff, you're really kind of dead. I mean, there's a lot to learn.
Right.
There's a lot to learn. That's the big thing, is that there's just a lot out there. There's a lot of information, and it helps to have somebody that's had the experience that can walk you through that process.
Right. Who's got the phone call from the guy that just fried his $7,000 solar because he put one too many solar panels on the string.
Oh no.
Got that call.
Oh really?
Should have been 9 panels. He put 10 on there, overvolted it, fried it.
Oh no.
$7 grand.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Now is that a warranted thing, or is that because the homeowner messed up?
Yep.
It's on him.
Yep.
Dang.
Yeah, you plug you go buy a gas dryer that's got a 120 volt plug.
Yeah.
And you cut the plug end off and put a 240 volt plug in it and plug it into 240. You'll just fry the circuit board. And then when you call GE and say, hey, your stuff doesn't work, they'll be like, what's on the end of that cord?
Yeah.
Like, that's not, same idea. It's the exact same idea. Too many volts, fried it. No, it's not a warranty claim.
Yeah. Okay.
So an hour of time with me would have saved him $7 grand.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's well worth it to seek somebody out that can do this, and go talk to Shawn for real.
Yeah, you don't have to. I am an option, though. Yeah, for sure. And I don't have all the answers, but that's why, like, if you were to reach out to me, I've got like a troubleshooting form on the website.
Okay.
And if you were to fill it out and it's not something that I can do, I will A, tell you that, and B, if I know someone else that could, I'll just send you to them.
Yeah.
So I don't want to waste my time or yours being like, oh yeah, let's have a conversation about something I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Not worth my time, not worth the customer's money.
Now, I know the price of solar panels has come down quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And if you are buying panels in bulk, that you can get a pretty good price on panels. What is the pinch point in solar as far as cost right now? Is it the inverters, charge controller systems, the batteries, it seems like the panels have come way down.
Yeah, panels are super cheap. I mean, we're talking about a quarter a watt if you buy one pallet. You know,
which is about like 20 something panels or something like
normally that. About somewhere between 24 and 36, just depending on the manufacturer.
Okay.
But, you know, put that in perspective, you know, you could buy a pallet of solar panels that would power an entire normal house. There's no such thing as normal, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
For like $2,500.
Yeah, like whatever the standard house.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So panels cheaper than they've. Look, I bought solar panels last year for like 36 cents a watt.
Yeah.
And I was telling everyone, you gotta buy them now, man. Once they're gone, they're gone. And now you can get them for 25.
Yeah.
Like I never thought I would see that. So yeah, they're way down. And of course now I'm saying, hey, buy them while they're cheap. And who knows what they're going to be next year? You know what I mean? The other thing I told people is, if you're ready to buy, there's no reason to wait.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready to buy, there's no reason to spend the money now. You know.
Yeah.
Batteries is that's where the real cost is, right?
Yeah.
So half of any off-grid system is batteries in terms of component cost. The inverters have come way down. There are inverters on the market that do everything. So they're an AC charge controller, they're a DC charge controller, sometimes multiple. They have generator input, they have grid input, they have AC output, all one deal, you know. And you know, and so those have come way down in price. Batteries is really, and then the other one is, if you don't want to do batteries and you want to use the grid as your battery, right? So if you're going to do a grid tie system,
the grid to supplement. So you're saying no batteries.
You're basically just trading kilowatt hours for kilowatt hours, right? If you're in a state where you get good net metering, that's still a good way to do it. But there, the bottleneck would be the permitting and the approvals. Okay.
Yeah.
Alabama, horrible state for. I don't even know if they have a net metering program, but it's horrible.
They're still trying.
Whatever they call it is horrible.
Yeah.
Here in Tennessee, horrible. So there's certain states, about half the states, that have proper net metering, where if you give us a kilowatt hour on the grid at noon and you take one at midnight, your bill is zero, and that's.
I got you. Okay.
Here in Tennessee, they'll pay you their avoided wholesale generation costs, so they're not even accounting for transmission and distribution losses, which is something like 2.5 cents. Okay, but then you pay retail. So at noon, if I give you a kilowatt hour on the grid, you give me 2.5 cents, and at midnight, if I take one, I pay 13.5 cents.
Oh wow!
Right. So that's why batteries are going into a lot more of these what they call behind the meter systems.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because it doesn't pay to put it back on the grid. In about half the states it does, and the other half it makes more sense to store your excess generation in a battery
and use
that instead of the grid power, and then only use the grid when you have to.
Yeah. So the grid is there to. You're basically running your power off your battery bank, and then you're using the grid when you need to. So you should be spending less on your utility bill because you're using less of that power. Then
you essentially get a 1-for-1. You get net metering, but instead of using the grid as your battery, you have your own.
And I believe that makes it a little easier for people to do installs and stuff like that as
Correct,
well.
Because at that point, unless you live in a very restrictive jurisdiction, you are essentially just plugging an appliance in.
Yeah.
Right? Now that appliance can be powered from the sun or it can be powered from a battery.
Yeah.
And then downstream of that appliance, you're going to run different loads within the house, but you're not putting anything back on the grid at that point.
But there's also considerations when you set up a system like that, right? Like you need to have like some type of switch that cuts you off from the grid in case there was like a grid down or whatever, so you wouldn't backfeed to the
Well,
grid?
no. So essentially,
is
the
it
way you would wire
completely
this,
separate?
yeah, you would have your main power, and then you would have a sub panel, and the inverter would be in between. So the inverter is only capable of feeding what's downstream of it. It can't feed back upstream where the main is.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be just like plugging in a battery charger into the wall. Okay. When the grid goes off, the battery doesn't backfeed through the charger into the wall. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's literally the exact same thing. The inverter won't backfeed. Now, they have some inverters out there that are capable of backfeeding that you can program to just not, you know,
Okay.
where it's a hybrid inverter. We can have solar, generator, battery, grid input, and then, you know, AC output.
Okay.
And those are still way less expensive than they used to be, but you can actually program those to, like, don't put any power back on the grid, only take from the grid, and only do it during these hours, and only if the battery bank is down to this level. So you can get really prescriptive on how you use the grid input on those.
Okay.
Yeah, but when I say behind the meter, I'm talking about an inverter that's not even capable of putting power back onto the grid.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ground mount versus roof mount. What are your thoughts on that?
Ground mount, yeah, all the way. The only time I would do a roof mount is if I did not have space on the ground for the panels.
Okay.
If I'm on a small lot,
Yeah.
and all I have is my roof, well, there you go. But you know, the likelihood of a solar panel causing a fire is low, but it's not zero.
Yeah.
So would I rather look out my window and see a fire over there,
Yeah.
or notice that my roof is a lot hotter than it normally is?
Yeah.
Right? That's one. Two, from a roof repair and maintenance standpoint, if I've got to do something to the roof, now I got to take all the panels off. So that's another consideration. The third one is harder and more dangerous to install, maintain, or troubleshoot.
Yep.
These panels down here in this part of the country, these panels are going to turn yellow this time of
It's
year.
gonna get hot.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying the pollen.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If we get a long period of time with no rain, they're going to get dusty, right?
Yeah.
You want to clean those off.
Which is gonna decrease the efficiency.
Yeah,
of the
dirty panels can reduce your generation by like 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to be able to clean those off. Well, do I want to just walk out my front door and spray my panels off, or do I want to go up on a ladder on my roof and spray my panels off?
Yeah.
When we got 8 inches of snow at my house
Yeah.
in January,
You were scraping.
guess
that
whose
snow off.
idiot butt was up on my cart? Now I have a ground mount array and I have an upper array.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm up there in my snowboard gear with a squeegee
Yeah.
trying to get 8 inches of snow off my solar panels.
Yeah.
The ones on the bottom, broom.
Easy.
Yeah, 15 minutes and the whole ground array was done.
Yeah.
Up top, an hour, and I was breathing hard when I was done with that job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, always ground mount. Now, here's the other thing. If you're doing a roof mount, your roof's already built,
Yeah.
right? So you will spend a little bit more money to do a ground mount because obviously you have to
You have
build
to
a
buy
structure,
all the structure, to
lumber,
put
concrete, and all that stuff, you know.
that in. Yeah.
So it does make it a little bit more expensive, but it's well worth the cost.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are different type of ground mount systems out there. Have you found like there's a pretty good one that you'd like to standardize on, or is
So I'm a huge fan of just pressure treated lumber,
okay,
and one of 3 mounting options. The first one is we
Not
go.
warm.
Okay. The first one is we go with what's called a snap and rack system. So very easy. It elevates the panel up above the wood a little bit, and it makes it really easy to work on, to maintain, to inspect, all of that, right? With that, you're going to pay for the mount, and then you're going to pay about $40 a panel for the mounting hardware, okay?
okay,
The super cheap way, which is what my ground mount system is pressure treated lumber,
okay,
lag bolt with a fender washer and a regular washer on top of that.
okay.
So literally I'm just lag bolting into the wood,
Okay.
and the washer is holding the panels down.
Okay.
So that is a $10 per panel
Yeah.
mounting solution.
Yeah.
Now, I'll have to do a little bit more maintenance there because that wood will expand and contract, you know, and so I might have to go with a larger bolt down the road. Whereas the snap and rack, and the other thing about that is the snap and rack system has like 4 connection points per panel.
Yep.
So it's like a stanchion almost.
Yep.
Which means if I have a long unbraced piece, my wood can bow a little bit. Whereas with my washer system, it sucks the frame of the panel down to the wood and actually stiffens up the wood members.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, don't do tilt. You don't have to worry about tilt.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about tracking.
What's your real efficiency gain there? I mean, you gain some, but it's
here's the deal. You gain about 15%. Here's the math. You gain about 15% if the panel stays the same temperature throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
But if my panel is pointed directly at the sun the whole day, do you think it's going to be warmer or hotter on average throughout the day?
It's going to be hotter.
Yeah, and a hotter panel is less efficient. The voltage is lower on it.
Yeah.
So I haven't done the math yet. I actually have the components to test this. I'm going to do like a 6-month test.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. Yeah.
But my guess is that you probably get about 7% more power for a dual axis tracking system, which costs about $100 to $150 per panel to put in.
Yeah, it's significantly more.
And if a panel costs $100,
yeah,
and I'm paying $150 per panel to get 7% more from the panel,
right? Yeah,
the math does not work.
Right.
Yeah, but I will actually have test results next year probably on that.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna build a 4-panel ground mount and a 4-panel dual axis tracking mount next to each other in the same field and put them on 2 separate systems and literally track them daily.
Compare the 2.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be really cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So, any other considerations when somebody's thinking about this? It seems to me like it's a great idea for preparedness and having something so that if the power goes out, that you have some type of power backup, and then if you're totally going off grid, then you escape the crazy fees for getting utilities to be put into your place. So
I think at the end of the day, be comfortable with starting small and building it up.
Yeah.
That's the key. Start small, build it up. Start with a generator and some gas storage, an inverter and batteries. You can charge the battery bank up with the inverter and a generator and just run off the batteries, and then add a charge controller and a couple solar panels, and then slowly build it up. I think that would be my advice, because for a couple grand you can get into a small system.
Yeah.
And then you can go up from there, which is kind of like what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be my advice, is don't be afraid of it. Just start with a small system and go from there.
Yeah. Like something that could power your freezers or something like that.
Yep.
In case of a power outage or
Keep your
like
refrigerator cool. When your refrigerator's cool, unplug it. Plug your freezer in. When that's cool, turn the system on.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, cool, Shawn. I really appreciate you coming on to talk
man.
with me.
I appreciate you having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, man. And I, wish you the best with the new venture with Hack My Homestead and all that.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for coming on my show.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right, appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks.